It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Mapineq webinar to introduce the Mapineq Link tool. Professor Melinda Mills will be introducing us the tool today. Professor Melinda Mills, she is a work package leader at the Mapineq project, director of the Leverhulme Center for Demographic Science, professor of demography and population health at the Oxford Population Health Unit at the University of Oxford, and founder of Data for Science. She's also professor of data science and public health policy at the Department of Economics, Econometrics, and Finance at the University of Groningen, and Department of Genetics at the same university in the Netherlands. Melinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and sorry the introduction took so long. Welcome everyone. We're delighted to see everyone here, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this project we've been working on, Mapineq Link, and then telling you that it's the alpha version. So this is the first version of the project that we've started. So what is Mapineq? I thought I should tell you a little bit about it first. So it's a European funded project by the European Commission. It's for 3 years, and we're already halfway through, so it's going quickly. And basically the idea is to map inequalities across the life course. And I mean, one of the main goals, a lot of people have looked at life course, education, employment, health inequalities, but we decided to take a strong focus looking at geospatial inequalities. So, and I'll show you the partners here, but please feel free, if you type in Mapineq, you can look at our website. This is gives you an idea of some of the people in the project. It's led by Jani Erola in Finland, and we have many partners that some of you on the call might recognize. Specifically working on the Mapineq database is myself, Doug Leisure, who will be giving the next 2 webinars tomorrow and Wednesday, talking sort of exploring the interactive database and the API and different things that you can do with it. And as well, Giovanni, who's in Groningen doing his PhD, also the Geodienst unit in Groningen that's been working on sort of the infrastructure of it as well too, and Zhang Yao, who's a geography student here as well at Oxford. So this just gives you a visual overview of what we're doing with this project. So really, it's an interactive database where we bring lots of different types of data together, and I'm going to sort of unpack that in the next few minutes to give you an idea of the kind of data we have and some of the plans we have. So it's really got different audiences. So for policymakers and journalists, we're hoping that it will allow them to explore and look at sort of data-driven, evidence-driven policy and investigative insights. But for researchers as well, it should allow you to visualize and explore the data. But also for data scientists and programmers, you should be able to use our APIs, work and interact with our database and unlock this or link it to your own database as well too. And Doug will be unpacking that on Tuesday and Wednesday. I just wanted to tell you that it's work in project or in process. We're really excited to get it out and show you the first sort of alpha versions to test and look at. But we're definitely open for comments and suggestions and improvements as well too. And we had to make some priorities to get our sort of what they call a minimum viable product out there. So we've worked on that. And so we prioritize data at the moment from the OECD and Eurostat. And then we've added some examples from some of our different types of databases and data types that I'll unpack for you. We've chosen some standards to follow by. And since it's a European project, we're initially starting with Europe with the hope to expand globally, which we'll be able to do, with follow-up projects and funding for this. But at the moment, we're focusing on Europe. And for that reason, we focus on what's called NUTS level variables that some of you might be familiar with as well, too. And I'll visually show you those in a moment. So in the future, we're also going to integrate different types of geospatial data. So thinking about points of location. So it might not just be, if you're looking at childcare or schools, it might not be, the expenditures that the government spends on it, but it might be how far physically am I located from those certain things. We're also looking at sort of distances in terms of not just how far things are as the crow flies, but what if you need to take public transport or go on a road? We'll give you some examples. We've integrated some raster data and as well some polygon data where you can actually sort of break down and map sort of green space or pollution or other types of environmental indicators. And you can have them calculated at different levels, but at the moment they're at NUTS 1, 2, 3 levels. So if you're interested in understanding a bit more about it, we've iterated the project a lot as we've gone on. It's been about a year and a half that we've released several reports. So please urge you to go and look at the Mapineq website, and you can look at some of the reports. And I'm just going to unpack some of those reports now so you can understand what data that we've started to focus on and we started to collect to look at inequalities in the life course and map them in a geospatial way. So we have this sort of multiverse of different types of data, and we have 4 modules at the moment that we've considered. So the first one is kind of the usual suspects that many of us in life course research look at, and inequalities research. So looking at institutional policies, so things about government expenditures, looking at educational policies, how long did children stay in school, all of these different aspects. Labor market, employment protection, housing, immigration, all of these sort of standard policies. I should note the caveat that since many of these are country level policies, they're often only available at the country level. So we're currently working on, looking at the database to see how we can make that easier for the user. But some things are only available at a higher level, for that reason. So keep that in mind when you're exploring the database. We've also excitingly have some environmental data. We've got some pollution data that we've entered, but we'll be introducing more climate related data. We do have some urban green space data as well too. We're also in the process of introducing some real world data, and you can look at the report on that. Things such as from APIs like Airbnb, house price listings. This is a really tricky one because there's provenance for some of that data. And so we have to go through all the licensing and different aspects. But what we are able to share, we will definitely be adding that as time goes on. And then we have the usual sort of demographic variables that we add in, about labor market statistics or migration, citizenship, mortality rates, health, different aspects as well. So what we think, why we've why we did this and why we embarked upon this, because you might think, well, there's a lot of geospatial data sets out there, but they're all sort of quite fragmented. So what we decided to do was to bring together, you see, we have really diverse types of data. So we tried to bring them together and sort of harmonize them, but also just sort of leave them in their native form. And then you can go to the documentation and say, oh, okay, this is from Eurostat, or this is from OECD, or this is from an internet provider. That's where we have the information from. But I think by expanding it across all of these different areas, real world data, environmental data, sort of policy, institutional data, we sort of cover a gap so you don't have to go to 20 different sites, but we're trying to get it all in one place. And that way you'll be able to see associations between pollution and education, or things that you just hadn't thought about connecting before, because it was often difficult. You'd have to go to those disparate data sites and do it yourself. Doug's going to talk to you in the next couple of days about an API. So it just will allow you to pull data from our site as well too, which we hope will be really useful. And then you'll be able to integrate it onto your own web page or your own types of data analysis. We're trying to really cater to different audiences too. So we're making it quite visual. So we hope that it can attract people that want to understand the data, play with the data, explore it a little bit more, in addition to scientific researchers. And what we're really excited about, and Doug will unpack that, and I'll show you a few examples, instead of just mapping the inequalities so you can see them across countries or across different regions, we're allowing bivariate associations. So you can see the association of one geospatial indicator with another. It'll become more real when I show it in a moment. So Doug will be unpacking the API interface, I think probably in more detail on Wednesday, but perhaps on Tuesday as well too. And this will allow you to query the database. You'll be able to retrieve data for bespoke or specific sort of geolocations that you're interested in. And as well, will be useful for your own interactive web applications. And I think what's really important, because we're European funded and the way we work is things are quite open and open source. So that's probably another advantage of us as well too, because there are some of these services, but they charge for access to some of the data, or it's difficult to find. So of course, we're dedicated to the FAIR principles as well too. So let's just unpack a little bit about the data content and modules. So I told you there were 4 different reports that talked about the substantive data that we collect. And then we have a 5th report, you can find it on the website, that sort of describes basically what I'm doing today about the interactive dashboard and website. So the first one we did in June of 2023 was we described the sort of usual suspects that we look at often in policy databases. So we've integrated at the moment some policy data from OECD and Eurostat, and I'll talk to you at the end. We're really interested if you have other suggestions, or you want to collaborate to introduce different types of policy or different types of information. That goes for everything here as well too. We see this as sort of a European and hopefully a world resource that we'll work on together that's high quality. So these are some of the indicators. These are the things we often look at, sort of, spending on retirement, thinking about different data relating to housing, and I'll just give you some examples to give you an idea of how it looks. So this is the actual interactive database. We're still working on things. You'll see it's got some growing pains. We're still working on the labels and different aspects, but we just wanted to get something out there so you would be able to see it and be able to work with us on developing it and polishing it further. So this just shows that you could map one indicator, for example. So you can choose from a drop-down list of, hundreds of variables. So this just shows you persons 50 to 69 years old receiving any kind of pension. And I think it's really exciting. Doug will show you tomorrow. Well, at least we find it exciting, but since you're on the call, you might as well too, is you can hover over the different data points and see, okay, well, what country is this and what are the indicators for that. You can look at things such as healthcare expenditure. This just gives you another example of one variable. Healthcare is percentage of expenditure on GDP. You can look at different indicators. This just shows by country. But you can also change the years as well from different drop-down menus that Doug will be unpacking. But let's say you want to zero in on sort of smaller geographical areas, you can do that as well too. So I just randomly pick something here. This just shows the vacant residential dwellings at the NUTS 3, so a small region. So we see quite some vacant residential dwellings, at least in 2001 in Barcelona and Rome, for example. But it really allows you to visualize these kind of things. And I think what we're really excited about are these bivariate correlations as well too. So this is just a screenshot from the dashboard. And as life course researchers know, we're often interested in linking different things. So 20 years ago, it's a long time ago, I worked on a book with some people, with Peter Blasfeld and Fabrizio Bernardi and other people. We worked on this project where we looked at economic uncertainty and how it related to the transition to adulthood, and it's still a relevant topic. So this shows the percentage of temporary contracts by total fertility rate for women, for example. And what you'll see is these bivariate correlations. So once you combine 2 geospatial data points together, it shows you, how are these correlated from a scatter plot on the right, and you can hover, or on the left, you can hover over and see that. And then it also shows, if you hover over the different colors at the bottom left, and I've also sort of highlighted them on the right, which you'll see here. Wait, is there a pointer? Yes, there is. Laser pointer. Yeah, so so these are bivariate plots. And if you hover over them, they'll give you the value. We're still working out some labeling here. But for example, you can see just to decode that for you. This one means that a higher percentage of temporary contracts is correlated with a lower total fertility rate. Or conversely, this blue color is a low percentage of temporary contracts, and then we have a high fertility rate. So this just shows you the causation between that. And I think that's what we're really excited about, that we're able to, show these correlations. But remember, correlation isn't causation, and many of you are thinking this, so I'll just put it here. If you've ever seen the spurious correlation site, it's really actually a lot of fun. But we really, have to put a user warning on this as well too. This just shows the example of the distance between Jupiter and the sun, and it correlates with the number of secretaries in Alaska. So just giving you an idea, we're allowing you to make any kind of correlations you want. With the database, we're not limiting nonsensical things, but, just always we have a user warning on this as well. So the second report, or actually this is the fourth one, but it follows logically here, is looking at all the sort of things that you would need when you want to understand. So if I'm looking at my region, my country, different sort of levels, sometimes you want to understand, okay, well, what's the population density in this area? What are the sex ratios? What are the ages at first union? How many NEETs, not in educational or employment or training? What's the level of net migration? I could go on, but you can see that we've included all of these different types of data sets together. Sometimes they're only, unfortunately, and you'll see that the geographical resolution at NUTS 3 level, so really small level, is still lacking. But that's interesting as well to learn and see where we can improve on that data. But you can get many of these from different levels. So that gives you an idea, and that's very much aligned with the Mapineq project as well, to look at all of these different aspects of the life course. The other one we're very excited about is the environmental data as well too. So introducing some climate data, some built landscape data, pollution data, and lots of different aspects in relation to that. This one we're still working very hard to integrate things, but we do have a few in already that I'll show you in a moment. So within the environmental one, we have 5 substantive areas. One is the earth and the natural landscape. So this just gives you some of the things we've included, and some of them we're still working on. The built landscape as well, too, about transportation, utilities, and structures. That's something that Doug, who's also a big part of this, he's worked on this a lot as well, and we're hoping to integrate some of that knowledge into this database as time goes on. And looking at different administrative boundaries. At the moment, we're forcing the data into these boundaries of country, NUTS 1, 2, 3 level. But as we expand geographically beyond Europe, we've developed it in a way that'll be flexible to check different administrative boundaries, because sometimes healthcare services or electoral systems, or they have different boundaries. So we're thinking about how to do that. And as well, information on the climate and the environment, introducing some more sort of things like temperature, humidity, rainfall, those aspects as well too. So we have integrated urban green space at the moment, and this is at a fairly, because you can do this at a fairly fine level of resolution. You can see, for example, I've just zeroed in on some areas in Germany, and you can see, for example, in Cologne you have high urban green density in Berlin as well, and some other areas. And some you have very, very low levels of urban green space. We've also integrated some pollution data as well too. We're still working on the labels and different aspects. I was just sort of hovering over looking at where is this in Poland, where you have really high levels of air pollution. You see it as well in, oh wait, let's use the pointer. You can see it as well in Turkey and some other areas, but you can sort of hover over and look at these things as well too, which we find, which can be useful for you as well too. And then Fabrizio Bernardi has worked on low emission zones in relation to education and educational achievement and attendance. You can look at our Mapineq website as well, but this just shows you a bivariate plot. Again, looking at so things you don't normally it takes a little bit more time to connect things. Sorry, I'm just trying to do the laser pointer to connect things like air pollution and educational attainment. As life course researchers, we're not, it takes a little bit more work to connect this kind of data because the information usually isn't in one database. But you can see, for example, and Doug will unpack these, then you can see we have a case study on this where we sort of explain it, but you can see the relationships between these kind of different factors as well, too. We're also really excited about the real world data, but this is really tricky stuff because of licensing and privacy and all the other things you can imagine. But we're used to using all of this register and survey administrative data. People like me also, a biodemographer, we introduce a lot of genetic or biological data as well too. But it's really interesting if we can try to capture some of the real world data. Which is one of the challenges I would say we're trying to do, either producing and getting this aggregated data using APIs that are increasingly difficult to access, but at least trying to include some of that data from aggregated social medias, or using some APIs from LinkedIn to look at like what are the skills that people are needed or advertising in certain areas. You can do searches and Google searches and blogs, job postings, lots of different things, and neighborhood, for example, looking at house prices or different things. And what I mean from this is that we get it largely from commercial and non-traditional sources. So that's what makes it quite different as well. But this is really challenging, and we've introduced some of them, but not all of the ones that we want to do. So we'll eventually include quite a broad array of data. At the moment, we've got internet speed. When people test for their internet speed on Ookla, it's geotagged, so you can see those kind of things. But we're working to figure out what legally we can include for different sort of social media aggregated data. Talking about it's usually nation specific. So, there's different rental sites or household sites. There's an Airbnb API, all of these different things about job advertisements as well. We're trying to think about how we can include this. There's also the media services like Spotify, Netflix, and YouTube have some sort of aggregated figures we can use as well too. So that just gives you an idea of sort of it's a lot of work and it involves some creativity, but we're hoping that this will really give us an edge on looking at sort of integrating real world data into life course research as well too. We also have case studies if you go to our webpage, and you can look at that. And so this just shows how we give an example of how you have high-speed internet and how that can actually impact labor market, your ability to leave unemployment, productivity figures, but also the relationship with house prices. So there's lots of different things that you can do with some of this real world data as well. Oh, this is just something I was playing with as well too. So I think cultural sociologists or other people might find this interesting. So you can have geo-coded things from a lot of this real world data, thinking about this just shows an example over time, who are the most streamed artists, for example, on Spotify. But you can imagine you can link that sort of to like, natural language processing or something, and looking at emotion, what are people listening to in the lyrics or the type of, so lots of people have worked on this actually in the creative industries as well too. So you can link it in a very creative way as well to get the mood of the nation or what people are listening to. So we think that I've already sort of talked about this, but we're hoping that some of these things you might find interesting if you're going to look at this. So the next webinars are going to explore things related to the interactive dashboard in the API. But I just wanted to conclude before we open it up for questions, is to just give you a quick look at the web page and what it looks like, so you can see what you can expect when you go to it. So this is the landing page. As you'll see, we have some case studies. We talk about as we do research, and we're hoping that if you use this and do research, that we'll post your research and amplify it as well too, if you do use the database. We also have a searchable data catalog, a little bit of information about us and how to contact us. And then what Doug is going to be unpacking is this interactive sort of exploratory database as well too. It's also, you can see on the, if you look at it as well too, you can see that if you need to find anything on the website itself, that you can search it with this thing here. And this just should give you a gateway into, case studies, give some examples. How do you use it? How do you browse the data? And depending on who you are, you might want to enter the portal in different ways. We've also highlighted some case studies, because just to give you an idea of, how you could use the database, but also just to unpack, if you're doing bivariate plots or different things, we sort of handhold or walk you through, this is how you would interpret it. Many of you won't need that, but some people that maybe aren't used to reading these kind of plots, they can get kind of difficult. We walk through and talk about how you could interpret the data. So we've got an example about high-speed internet. I showed you that already, how it's related to labor market, productivity, house prices. We also look at the local population, demographic composition in terms of age, ethnicity, social deprivation, and the availability of hospital beds. So we did this during the pandemic, and we give that example. We talk about air pollution. I talked about that earlier. Urban green space, how that might be linked to better health outcomes. We're working on a case study in relation to life expectancy, and I showed you the example of economic uncertainty and fertility. And we would be so interested if some of you dive in and think of some other interesting case studies, and we could work together with you. You would be the author, of course, to highlight some case studies of how you could use this. This just gives you an example of what it looks like. So, we talk about, how you could use this to, do really refined geospatial indicators. And the example we give is a study we published in BMC Medicine during COVID, where we mapped the demographic composition of populations down to a very small local area estimates, looking at age, ethnicity, and social deprivation. And then we mapped it against the number of critical care and hospital beds that were there. And by just doing that simple thing, we were able to predict which hospitals would become overwhelmed the first during COVID. So you can imagine you could do this for lots of things. So you can sort of map supply and demand. We knew that the fatality rates were higher in older people, for example. So you could see, are there older people in this neighborhood? What are the levels of social deprivation? And then you could map it doing these bivariate plots in relation to the number of hospital beds. So we have various things you can do, and we're always interested in your opinion on it, because as I said, we're still iterating it, but it's time to just get it out and have people critique it and find mistakes with it. How you could use it, explore it, and as well some tutorials on an API deep dive as well for those of you that want to get into working with the data in that way. And also the data catalog. Now, the data catalog, we're still working on it, but we think it's a really good idea, because you get all these variables, and it can become a bit overwhelming as well too. So this just gives you just a sort of a screenshot here. So let's say I'm interested in fertility, which of course I'm I'm always interested in that topic. So I want to see, okay, well, what data do you have in the database right now that is related to fertility? So I put FERT, but you could type the whole word or variations on it. And then it shows you, okay, well, these are the ones we have these different variables, and we're still working out a better way to name things so you can find them. And we're thinking of perhaps adding filters in like I only want NUTS2 regions, or I only want from this time frame. But at the moment, you'll be able to see the available years and the different variables that are in the database. So we're hoping that helps you work with the database a bit more. We're also thinking about different gateways into it as well, and different audiences that might be interested in it. So if you're a policymaker, you can click on that, and we give some examples of why you might want to look at this, and some hints of how to use it as well. Or if you're a journalist, just sort of clarifying, you can find your next big scoop, for example. That's maybe a bit ambitious, but by looking at these different associations. And the same thing would hold for researchers and people also wanting to use the API. So we think that so somebody that wants to use the API probably might not be as interested in exploring some of the relationships and having someone explain them a bit more, for example. And then Doug's going to be walking through that. Just gives you an example of our interactive dashboard. We're still working on it. So this is an example of, the available, let's just get the pointer, of the available hospital beds at NUTS2 region and the population who's 75 and older. So that was just an example I was giving you before too. So you can do all these different things. You can get into a bit of a rabbit hole. It's really, you can start graphing and mapping a whole bunch of things. So just with a user warning, it can you can spend a lot of time there, because as you can see, we're still working on it, but there's a lot of filters you can add in. It's like, oh, what if I want to look at this age group or different things? So, and it visualizes it right away. So it's quite nice for exploration. Doug will be talking about this in the I think on Wednesday in more detail, but we have some tutorials as well if you want to use the API and how you could interact with it. So I see I'm at 30 minutes, and I want to leave some time for questions. But just to conclude, well, we're hoping that you see this as a resource where we've put the work in to sort of curate it. We've got a searchable catalog. We kind of see it as a sandbox. You'll be able to explore and play with it, and maybe find some interesting associations at a geospatial level. Or maybe you just want to graph the geospatial differences in a really quick way, and embed that map into your academic article or into your policy report or something that you're working on. So we welcome that, and we allow you to download the data. We allow you to download a copy of the graph as well, with the hope that you cite us in this project as well. I think we're excited about this bivariate thing. I think I've shown enough excitement there already on it. And I think, just by doing these different maps and having these different kind of contextual things like pollution and education, or things that you normally can't map together as a life course researcher, but you think they probably have an important, play an important role, is important. And I've talked about the API too, to just allow you to, if you don't just want to graph the data, but you want to actually use it, how you can pull from it. I just wanted to really clarify that this is the alpha version. So it's still work in progress. You're going to go on to it. You're going to see some awkward labels, things that we're still working on. But we just want to put it, live out into the world to get some of your opinions and suggestions. We're definitely interested in some people that want to test it as well too, and collaborators as well. You might see some missing types of data or regions, or let's say you've already pulled all the housing prices from a commercial site in your country. So it's usually country specific. So maybe you want to collaborate, and we find a way to integrate that data into our website as well. And maybe you've just found something really interesting that you'd love to share and get on the website as well. I've done some contact information, and I know you're all thinking, how do I get onto this? But we'll be talking about that, and Doug will be unpacking it as well on Tuesday and Wednesday. So this is just my short description of it, and I hope that some of you will be interested in using it. And I now say that we open it up for questions and answers, where you put your hand up, or you can answer, or you can put some things in the chat as well too. And Doug or myself will be trying to answer questions in the chat, but we might not get to all of them. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so I can see, and I can see Andrea has a question already, so please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I hope you can hear me. Everything
I
works?
can hear
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, that's great. Super nice work. Thank you. I mean, super nice presentation as well. I have just two quick points because I worked on something more or less similar. So my first question is about, especially from the Eurostat, many of the variables are available at the aggregate level, as you said, like at the country level or NUTS1 level. Did you use these variables then? Did you apply the same value for all the smaller regions within the same level, or did you make an effort to disaggregate them further, like using maybe other variables? This is the first question. And the second one is, if you already identified possible expansions area in geographical terms, like outside of Europe, if there is already like a rough idea of where maybe the next case study might be. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the nice comments. I'll start, and then if Doug wants to come in, he might not need to at that question. But so I think you've really, so some things are only aggregated at the country level, and sometimes there's a reason. So if it's number of women in parliament, for example, then this is a country level variable, right? So this one will only be at the country level. But you raise an interesting question. So there's two responses there. One is we're trying to work on mapping, if it's a country level variable, to do bivariate relationships with NUTS2 and NUTS3. We're still working on that. And I think you raise an interesting question of, could we disaggregate some of those things in more detail? We haven't at the moment, but that would be really, really something interesting. And then you need these country level experts and national statistical authorities and different aspects. The second one, have we identified possible expansion areas? Well, the world outside of Europe. I'm located in Groningen, but also in the UK. And you might have noticed that the UK has dropped off of European data because of a certain Brexit issue. But definitely our goal would be to expand this across the world, actually. So we're looking, this is only a 3-year project, so we're looking to follow up funding as well too. So first, we can look at your OECD data, but then expand it further. Doug, would you like to add anything?
You just made the point I was going to make. So we're ingesting data from OECD. So this would be probably the easiest next step is to expand to OECD countries. And we've built GADM boundaries into the database already. These are globally harmonized administrative boundaries like NUTS, but with global coverage. And we've done that to help make that next step easier.
Okay, I see lots of questions in the chat.
Sure.
And Doug has been replying to many, but perhaps you can bring one, Melinda, here, which is about the question is if the microdata is weighted by population size.
Okay, so I'm just trying to find that question to understand it, or if you want to, whoever asked it, if you want to unmic yourself and ask it. I'm just trying to find it. There, I can see it.
Yes, it's me who asked the question.
Yes.
Hello.
So I think you've frozen, unfortunately. Yeah, have you frozen for other people? I think so, but I can see your question, and hopefully you will come back. The microdata weighted by population size has been weighted. Okay. So what I was showing you there in my example was, no, it wasn't weighted. It was just showing the number of pension recipients. But you could also, do that bivariate plot by the share of that population. So we're just showing you, like, as I said, I showed you the spurious correlation example. We're just showing you the raw data, and you can do that. So I mean, you could also download the data and weight it as well too. And would it be possible to add data on gender inequality? Yeah, this is a great point. So Daniela, I hope we're taking all of these questions as well too. So yes, gender equality and indices and things. So we just, want to expand out. So we welcome all these suggestions. We also welcome people that want to do it. as well too and work with us. I see 2 hands raised, so I'll go to Marita Selig first.
Hi, yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, just as a quick background, I work in migration research, migration and integration research. So for me, this is super interesting data because especially correlating this with different migration indicators and integration indicators. And yeah, I'm super surprised to also see how much OECD and Eurostat data is available. So thank you for providing it in such a neat format. I was wondering what data sets do you plan to expand on and which countries? So I have worked with ACLED dataset before. That's the only experience I've had with geospatial datasets. And then, yeah, I'm also looking forward to the future sessions to learn more how to integrate it into R and so on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I think you said something really important there is when we started going through the OECD and Eurostat data, it is just a wealth of data. And I'm not sure that I was aware of how much data was actually there and how much was geospatially, especially in relation to migration. There's some really interesting things about like people's citizenship, where they came from, when they came, their employment status and all these other things. And I think just being able to work with it and play with it will be really interesting. Yeah, so in terms of future data integration, you can see that we thought, okay, well, let's just get something out of what we have now and ask the community what they want as well too. Doug, do you have any points you want to raise about specifically in relation to immigration or future data sets?
I could say a few things about future data sets here. So we're now starting to kind of expand out and look at other geospatial data that's got full coverage for Europe and even better globally. So this includes some stuff that we've already included, like the Ookla internet speeds that Melinda mentioned, remotely sensed air pollution data, and then some things about the built environment, like global building footprints. We can get kind of urban density and these types of measures. So we're starting to kind of expand out with prioritizing these geospatial data that have full coverage that we can then summarize to NUTS boundaries and GADM boundaries globally.
Great, thank you. I see somebody with Rogers raised a hand.
Hi, Melinda. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. That's a very good presentation. Thank you for it and for the initiative. I think I'll just ask the question, one of the questions that I asked in the comments, because Doug answered another one. And this is based on you mentioning life cost, like life cost data. And from my understanding, I think like life cost research looks at like people from like individualized from that time of birth to when they die. And from an inequality perspective, I guess you'd be looking at maybe a cohort and seeing like what kind of factors are there like systemic factors that lead to disadvantage or advantage later in life. So I'm wondering, like, would this data allow us to answer such kind of research questions? Or maybe more broadly, what kind of life course questions would this data allow us to answer? Thank you.
That's a really great question. And I can see some prominent life course researchers on the call. In fact, in the middle of my screen is Martin Coley, who very nice to see you. I'm sure you could, I will start with an answer, but we have some famous life course researchers on the call that could probably give a better answer than I could. But welcome, Martin, and others as well, and Leo van Vissen and other people that I see on my screen. But yeah, so this can really, look at, so an idea about using this data is you have this micro level data. You might have administrative data or survey data or these different types of data where you're looking at, I don't know, transition into adulthood or into parenthood or educational transitions or occupational mobility or health or or career changes or just multiple things. So this is what we look at as life course researchers. And what we think is this, if you have the geolocation of the people that you're looking at, so you have, where they're born, or you have their housing histories, or where they've moved, or what Marita was talking about migration, and, you'll be able to link this geographical data to do a multi-level model, for example. So we've seen lots of people, in life course research, they look at adding, I don't know, the employment regulations or something from a different country or a different region. And they do a multi-level model to explain, what's the variance? How much variance is explained by these individual factors or explained by the regional or country level? So I think there's a lot of exciting things you'll be able to do. Now, our coverage in terms of time, it might not get all of the cohorts that you're interested in, and but that's something we can expand on and are open to suggestions on. But in some cases we only have the data that's available out there as well too. So I think it offers some exciting possibilities, and that's why Doug's going to talk about it on Tuesday and Wednesday, about how you could take this data and then just layer it onto your own data as well too, to do these kind of analyses. Doug, do you want to answer or add anything to that?
No, I've got nothing on that one. Thanks, Melinda.
Maybe Martin Coley, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I guess the question is also about longitudinal data, and
Right.
from what I understand, that's not what you're doing. I mean, you can't do everything. So the questions that can be answered are limited by the type of data that you have, but that's the case always. So.
Yeah, so I think that, thank you sorry to put you on the spot, but yeah, so I think, we have data, and what I showed you from the data catalog as well, you'll be able to select data from quite a few years for some variables, but you might not have the coverage. Like if you have a longer birth cohort or something, you might not have the coverage for all the periods, but you should be able to get at something. So if there was a policy intervention that happened, for example, or you could see some of those things over time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just seeing if please raise your hand if you have any other questions, but otherwise we'll start fishing through the okay, I can fishing through the questions here too. So put your hand up if you've raised something.
Melinda, perhaps you could say some words about, because in our audience here we have also a substantial number of people that are not from academia, and how easy and intuitive it is to use these maps for people who are not necessarily coming from a scientific background, but would be very interested, for example, to display indicators at a regional or national or European level for advocacy purposes and this kind of things.
Yeah, so thank you for raising that, Daniela. So I think so what we're hoping is that this will allow you to go so that's why we have these sort of different gateways, and we give examples, about how you could use this data if you're a policymaker or if you're a journalist. And I think the exciting thing or the fun thing about it is that you should be able to quite quickly just be able to type in. So we get these questions, like a lot of questions about life course of how does fertility vary according to these different urban areas or in these different regions, or how many migrants are here or there, and and things like that. So you should be able to actually just go into the database, and then Doug will show you tomorrow, but then you just click on visualize this, and then all of a sudden you can just see it, and then you're like, wow, that area is really it's like a heat map. That area is really, really dark. So what is that? So then you can hover over it and you can see, oh, that's that certain region, or, oh, that's a really urban region, so this is why this is happening. You could see it with the pollution data and different things. So I think it, just the visual aspect of it, you can use it. And we know in policy, it has to be data driven, but we also know it has to be sold as a narrative as well too, and often to communicate communicate to non-technical people or politicians or those making sort of decisions, a picture says 1,000 words or whatever the saying is. So I think you'll be able to really visualize it and see it and also interact with it as well too. Doug, do you have anything you want to add on that?
I would maybe highlight the case studies. So the case studies is a part of the page where we're trying to kind of curate a narrative that's a short, kind of digestible version of describing an interesting relationship with policy relevance that's coming from data in the database, and then linking that through so that the reader can then go explore that in more depth with the tool. And this is the idea with that kind of part of the page, is trying to tell a story from the data in an accessible format, but then having that gateway where you can dive deeper if you want to.
I also see there's a question from Leo Van Vissen. We might have, Leo, do you want to ask it now or?
Hi, Melinda. No, yeah, well, sort of. I got a first answer from Doug. Thanks, Doug, for being that fast in doing it. Well, maybe I'll take the opportunity that we are working on a sort of parallel project called Premium EU, which also collects a lot of data to help policymakers make decisions about the right policies for migration, sort of fostering regional development. And I see a lot of parallel sort of things with your project. So we may steal some of your data if you allow us to use in our data, because especially some of the social indicators and the social dimensions that we are trying to look at are sort of difficult to find. So yeah, that would be very helpful and sort of combining strength of two parties. But my question was about sort of the longitudinal character of our regions, and because we need to build up a longitudinal sort of time series of regions to work. In our case, sort of how much, for instance, is migration linked to change in regional development. But for many countries, the time series stops because, well, one municipality changes from one to the other, and then Eurostat, or they just start another entity in a sense, but that it loses then the longitudinal character. But I see now that for your purposes, it's not too big of a problem. As Martin said, the longitudinal dimension is not the prime characteristic of your data, as I understand.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to unpack some of that. So you can definitely look at features. It differs by variable, and you can see that when you search in the data catalog. So for some of them, you could get a pretty long longitudinal time frame, and especially some of the environmental data and things, we have a much longer longitudinal window. So that's important. And then you said you could. So I'm happy to hear about your project, and it would be great that we can have synergies. And you said you could steal the data, but you don't have to steal the data because we operate by FAIR principles. So it's open. So we're just opening this data as well. I know you didn't mean it, but so we're opening that up as well. I can see a few. So thank you, Leo. And you talked about changing administrative boundaries. That's something that, I mean, everybody has to deal with. So we describe that, and we're doing our best to try to deal with that. And what Doug said is we have sort of the data also in a more standardized way as well too, once we have data outside of Europe as well too. I see a few questions in the chat. I'll start by answering them, and then I'll turn it to Doug because we're almost at time. Some people were talking about the URL. Yeah, so thanks for letting us know, and we'll be working on the valid security certificates and different aspects. As we said, it's the alpha version, but we're putting our first version out into the world. So Doug's going to look into. Oh, he's already answered. You're so quick, Doug. And then somebody asked, I'm not sure I fully understand where the data can be taken from. That's okay that you don't understand that, because I didn't really describe it. So it's not you. Doug will be talking about that. Doug, I turn it to you. I think it's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is a perfect question for the end of the hour. So so tomorrow, join us again, and I'll be talking about the dashboard in a bit more depth. And I can show you how to search the database through the dashboard, and then when you find interesting data, how to export that as a CSV. And then on Wednesday, we'll talk about the API, and this is just a way that you can pull data from our database onto your own website, or into your own data analysis. So you could pull it straight into your R environment or Python, or however you're doing your analysis. So we'll cover those topics in more detail in the next 2 days. So come back to get that information. Back to you, Melinda.
So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate that you joined. Some people are asking if they could get the slides. Definitely, I think Daniela will be working through that. And as well, this is recorded, this session as well, too. So I'm sure you can watch it back or send it to other people who couldn't join, who you think might be interested. Please contact us. We would love to work with you if you're interested, or just hear your thoughts about things we could do better or different, or things that we're missing. I turn it back to Daniela to finish up, but thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, Melinda, and thanks everyone for joining us today. It has been a very, very productive session, but we'll have 2 more sessions, one tomorrow on Wednesday, and we really hope to see you there. I'll send you follow-up emails after we have the three sessions with the links to the YouTube video and more information about the database. So you will receive follow-ups. And for the moment, I say see you tomorrow and stay engaged in the project.
Great. Thank you very much.
Melinda.
Thanks everyone for joining. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.